Use the relative frequency histogram below to complete each part. A. Identify the class with the greatest and the class with the least frequency. B. Approximate the greatest and least relative frequencies. C. Approximate the relative frequency of the second class. When we look at this particular problem, notice first off that there is this little icon here. If you left click on that icon in the problem, you will be given an option to create one of three different size graphs, or I should say views of this graph, so it might be easier to read. And that would be something that you want to definitely look at when you're doing this problem. So part A, identify the class with the greatest and the class with the least frequency. In the problem, you'll be asked to use a multiple choice format, and we'll ask you different ways of answering this question. Let me show you the example. Now this is multiple choice here. And when we look at this, this is what are the boundaries of the class with the greatest relative frequency? And you're given four choices. A, 19 to 21 minutes. B, 18.5 to 19.5 minutes. C is 35 to 40%, and D is 20 to 21 minutes. Now, when I talk about the boundaries, what we're looking at are the lower limit and the upper limit of each class. This right here, the 18.5 for this one, is the midpoint. And since the next midpoint would be 19.5, it would follow that this right here would have to be 20. That would have to be 19. And then below that, this would have to be 18. So that would be the class from 18 to 19. Now I want to find the boundaries of the class with the greatest relative frequency, which means that I am looking at this particular bar on the histogram because this has the highest value. And we note that the midpoint is 20.5, so therefore when we look at the upper and lower boundaries, we will have 21 and we will have 20. So our answer will be D, 20 to 21 minutes. I want to examine this particular choice right here, 35 to 40%. Now that would be an accurate answer if we were asked what was the greatest relative frequency. In that case, it would be 35 to 40%, because if you notice, the key to this is the label on this axis of relative frequency. The x-axis right here is always going to be your class or interval, and that's the key to these problems, or one of the keys anyways. So let's move on and finish part A. It says identify the class with the greatest and the class with the least frequency. Well, the least frequency will be this one right here because it has the lowest value. And once again, we're going to look at the upper limit and we're going to look at the lower limit, and this would be 22 to 23. So the answer to A for the second part would be 22 to 23. Now this is all part of part A, so we look at 22 to 23 minutes would be right here. And those would be our answers. And then we would move on to part B. Approximate the greatest and least relative frequencies. I'm not going to copy that in from the program because it's simply going to be an open response question. You'll be given an answer field with a percentage sign after it, so you have to determine what the percent is. So part B, we're going to look at the greatest relative frequency. So we note already that this right here is our class that has the greatest relative frequency. And to estimate this, we're going to just kind of backtrack to the y-axis right here, and that's going to be approximately 39% for the greatest frequency. Now the next part of this is the least relative frequency, and we've already established that right here. And so once again, we're just going to look at this and we're going to extrapolate to the y-axis, and that should hopefully be a straight line. This is going to be an approximate. Okay, there's a little bit of fudge factor in here. So I'm thinking that's roughly 3%, maybe 2%. So I would go ahead and try and put 3% into the program for the least frequency. And then the last part of this problem is going to be that we need to look at part C, which is approximate the relative frequency of the second class. Well, the second class is this one right here. And so I want to go ahead and approximate it. Let me move my arrow up just a little bit so I can look at this. And I'm going to bring this across. And that's a tough one. It's going to be 34, 35%. So I would estimate it at roughly 35% for the second class. And that's how you answer these questions.